Professor Srivastava. May I now invite our final speaker, Dr. S Narayan, Head of Research and Visiting Senior Research Fellow at ISIS. Dr. Narayan, please.
Mr. Pillai, Professor Srivastava, it's very difficult to follow because everything has been said. So what I will try to do is to try and take a slightly different track and look at this issue in a very kind of a little bit of a structured manner. What are the kind of challenges that are getting faced by businesses and doing business? And what are the opportunities of tackling these challenges? Some of the challenges that we have actually goes back to colonial era. In the sense that we have a lot of laws which goes back to 1880. We have a Land Acquisition Act, which is 1884. We have a labor law, which is 1864. We have a fire safety law, which is 1895, which requires that to protect against fire, you should have, every factory should have a bucket full of sand available in a corner. I think this is the law. You may have the most modern fire extinguisher, but if you don't have the bucket full of sand, you're violating that law. Recently, a couple of weeks back, my brother-in-law, he runs a small automobile parts manufacturing thing, and he was hauled up by the labor court. And he was hauled up by the labor court because the labor inspector had said that as per law, you're supposed to have a creche in every factory, and you don't have a creche. So he was before the labor court, and he said, but all the people, he said, there are only 25 employees, there are 12 girls, and all of them are unmarried girls. So there's absolute silence in the labor court. And they looked at him quite seriously. What's he saying? He said, no, all of them are unmarried girls. But then the judge said, what does it have to do with having a creche? Full stop. So the interpretation of the legal aspects of the law can get to be considerably, I will use the word petty, at the implementation level. And this is actually a serious problem for those people who are doing businesses. So I think I will address this as to how to tackle this and I go along. So I would say my point number one is old laws, rigid laws. Mr. Pillai mentioned the land acquisition law. The problem with the land acquisition law and the land problem is not that there is so much agitation about acquisition. The problem is in the original law. The original law said that government can acquire land for a public purpose. Now, at that time, in 1894, a public purpose really meant that in a village you put up, let's say, a post office, a bank, a police station, a sub-jail, a government office, etc. That was public purpose. Then round about the 50s or 60s, government said, developing industry is a public purpose. I am going to buy land and give it out to industries to develop. And therefore, when I am buying it, I'm not holding the land, but I give it to a public purpose. But if you really look at it very carefully, it's not really a public purpose. You are acquiring land from somebody and giving it away to somebody else, from actually the landholders who are peasants, and then you're giving it to industries who are actually capitalists, if you think in those terms. And this dilemma is what has enlarged, because once this was available, then big people, I must mention names we are here, that if you think about the West Bengal controversy which happened over the car factory, the point was that the owners wanted close to 800, 900 acres of land. You really need that kind of land for setting up a car factory. Can you not do it in less? The kind of land that has been occupied by steel plants and by public sector units is far in excess of what would be considered rational. And I think that arises from the fact that this kind of interpretation happens. So there is a reaction. There is a reaction to say, listen, land is not a free asset, a cheap asset. It's not an inexhaustible asset. Make sure that you take the kind of a land that you need for the factory and make sure that you pay the people who are getting disengaged. This is the debate which is going on, and for me, and certainly on the part of the people who are advocating this, okay, the methodologies, the approaches, the numbers may be different, but certainly the old act cannot stand. And this is so for many, many, many of the legislations. And quite apart from legislation, there are rules, regulations which come in, which all need to be looked at. So I would say the first issue of doing business is the antiquity of the laws and the need to make some changes in those laws. And this is what ongoing businesses face on a day-to-day basis. Added to this is the complexity that not only are new laws coming in, but sometimes the courts make interpretations of these laws which are perhaps not relevant to the situation which the companies are facing. And some of those interpretations, therefore, open up a lot of worries and anxieties to the investors. In the area of regulation, I would look at 4 or 5 areas which bother people. One is, of course, labor regulation. Labor regulation, the difficulties of hiring and firing people, or particularly firing people. Mr. Pillai already mentioned the problems of closing down businesses, firing people. We had an incident in the Maruti factory, Suzuki factory last year in Delhi, where there was a conflict between the contract labor and the regular labor. But if you again look at it very carefully, what was the conflict about? The management, because it could not hire and fire labor fast enough, employed a lot of contract labor, but decided that the contract labor would be paid far lower, would not be given the benefits of provident fund, health, etc., and paid far lower than the regular labor. So in the same workstation, you have 2 people getting paid very different salaries. So you're breeding conflict. So I would really say that this is not a policy problem, this is not an implementation problem, this is purely a problem of, I would say in some ways unfair practice at the workplace. But if you ask the management, they would say, but if this guy is bad, you give me a way out. Tell me a way of firing him, then I don't want contract labor. I'll hire everybody if there is mobility of labor that is provided for. So there is an interface between the way the business looks at the problem and the government looks at the problem. And this is the interface which needs to be actually sorted out. It is the same when you come to environment pollution, which is again becoming a fairly large issue here. We have a situation where we have a very interesting situation. In the south, in Tamil Nadu, there is one particular belt which is very famous called leather. So there's a lot of leather dyeing industries, and the leather dyeing industries were putting their pollutants into the river. So the government came up with a program that, okay, let's have a zero pollution emission standard, and let the government put up a cooperative unit for cleaning up the environment. And that particular unit would be run by everybody, and everybody would have to give his waste there, and therefore you get zero pollution in the environment. Over a period of time, what happened was that, let us say there were 100 units on that belt, some of the units actually closed down. Some of the units closed down, did not work well, so okay. So as against 100 units, you have 60 to 70 units. Now if you reduce the capacity of that particular pollution station, then the amount of clean water that is discharged actually changes considerably. The technology of, you can't, I mean, if you have 100% clean water coming out of 100 factories, if you have 60 factories putting water, you don't get clean water out, you do get some pollutants. Okay? So the people revolt. So these are again, would you call it a legislative problem? Would you call it a business problem? I think it's a combination of those problems. Somebody should have got together in the middle, improved the technology to make sure it works. And these cooperative things beyond the stage, I mean, it's okay initially, beyond the stage don't work. People should have been encouraged to put up their own pollution removal factories or whatever it is. So I do like to make the point that yes, there are regulatory issues, there are kind of inspectorate issues, But there are also issues from the point of business where there is not a quick enough response and reaction to try to solve the problem in a qualitative manner along with the government. And I think this is I will put this in one box. For the Madras Chamber of Commerce, I mean, a small group, including me in Chennai, we are doing a kind of very detailed study of what are the actual regulatory issues in running a business that as you face. Like I said, the setting up the crash, the fire bucket kind of issues. And is it possible, therefore, to go back to government and say, these rules are no longer required? Just remove these rules, which are antiquated, which are antediluvian, which are not relevant for current. And I do think that we will be able to come out with a list of some 40 or 50 or 60 kind of rules and regulations which do not pertain to, in various laws which relate to running a business, we'll be able to come up with some recommendations. A lot of them can be removed by executive order. And we do think that certainly, I mean, I'm fairly confident about my state of Tamil Nadu, that certainly by this time next year, a lot of these irritants will get removed just by executive fear. It's just that people have not taken the trouble to identify. Everybody has anecdotes, everybody has a backstory, everybody has a back experience. But I think it's the first time that the chamber has got together to try to identify all this and then go back to government and say, these are real problems, can't you get rid of them? And and we are strongly supported by the government in saying, okay, tell us what you want to remove the fire bucket, whatever. So I think this is one progress that we are really trying to do. The second area is, so this is, I would call the law and regulation. The second area is, of course, what the provision of the government. I think both Mr. Pillai and Professor Srivastava have already talked about infrastructure problems. The time taken to port, the logistics problem to the port. I mean, compared to today, I mean, if I take let's say, Delhi-Mumbai is the most congested road transportation corridor, the time has gone down from, let's say, 10 years ago, from 2002, the time was close to about 16 to 18 hours. It's come down to 12 hours. But 12 hours is still too long. It has come down to about 8 to 10 hours. Okay. But this is a 20-30% improvement because the road network is definitely improved. Again, in the southern parts, the road network is so much better than it was about 8 to 10 years ago. So movement is really very much faster, and we have larger multi-axle vehicles which are moving there. The third, of course, is, again, this was mentioned. The third, of course, is really knowledge about what you're going to sell, where you're going to sell, and when you're going to sell. And I think this is extremely crucial. I mean, India is a very, very diverse country. The problem of most foreign companies investing in India is that they take India as India. I mean, we don't, I mean, Singapore and we don't even eat the same food. I mean, stores food totally different. So it's absolutely, there's nothing in common between the kind of habits in the north and the habits in the south, and the kind of practices, the kind of business practices. What a lot of things which happen by word of mouth do not happen by contract in several parts of the country. So I think this most of the external businesses don't understand. I have two recent examples of how multinationals are approaching this problem. One, again, I'm mentioning names without their permission, but it's a very good example. One is Daimler. Daimler has come into India very recently. They started their factory in September last year. And they are manufacturing, they decided to take the Tata and Ashok Leyland, which are big truck manufacturing companies, they decided to take them head on. That means they make the same kind of vehicles for the same kind of loads, for the same kind of roads. Right? But they are pricing their own vehicles about 10% higher. So they decided to do two things. One, They decided that they would introduce an engine which is more fuel efficient. They have the technology to do that. They decided that they would give a slightly higher engine power with that same chassis. And third, most importantly, while Tata and Ashok Leyland send out their trucks on just on a bare bed basis, these people said, we'll build the driver comfort, we'll build the air-conditioned cab, we'll build a power steering, we'll give comfort to the guy who's going to sit there 14 hours a day. And today we are talking of 10 months. I mean, and while the commercial vehicle sales have come down in the country, and Tata and Ashok Leyland today are offering 10-15% discounts, so the price differential today is 20-25%. Daimler has a long waiting line. They are ramping up from 600 vehicles a month to 2,000 by the end of this year. Because they understood, they spent time and understand the market. Another company is a Japanese company, I can't mention that name, who's come in here and who's going to manufacture, I would say, passenger vehicles, small trucks, etc. And they have plans that they will not put the first manufacturing plant before 2016. They are marketing now. They are bringing in vehicles and marketing, studying the market, selling. They are setting up distributorships. They are going about things so methodically. They don't want to move without getting environmental clearances, without getting, they have a huge setup which is waiting for, which is really planning for about 3 to 4 years. And I think this is perhaps another major hesitation on the part of all foreign investors is to invest in a market study, to invest in that area, to find out what exactly is happening, what will sell, what will not sell, how it will sell, what are the methods of distribution. And I think if you look at the kind of examples of Barista or even the first round of McDonald's investments in India, this was the where you put up a McDonald's shop is very important. Because locations even in a city, from one point of the city to the other point of the city is totally different. Okay, you put a McDonald's shop next to a dosa shop and you are in for disaster. So I think I would echo Professor Srivastava in saying that very important to invest in a study, very important to invest in somebody who knows, who can identify opportunities which vary from state to state, the market conditions there, data. A lot of data is just not available. Data has to be collected. Market research, I sit on a board of a company called Dabur, and they have been around for, I think, 4 generations. They are not yet into the south. They are not comfortable getting into the south because they feel that they don't know enough of the southern taste to sell their product. Whether a red toothpaste, monkey brand red toothpaste will sell in the south, which it sells in Bihar, Bandar Chowk, I don't know, they don't know it yet. So I think the markets are so distinctly diverse that it's very, very important to find out the diversity, to spend a little money and time and investment. And this is my suggestion to the investors here. And finally, I would say, what are the opportunities? Today, with the rupee falling sharply against the dollar, I find that the entire range of light engineering industry, particularly the auto ancillary industry, is looking extremely buoyant. Not only are all the big manufacturers already there, the Toyota is there, the Honda is there, the BMW is there, Mercedes is there, but all these people are now wanting to export parts back to their OE. So I see the last 5 or 6 months, particularly the last, that there's a huge demand for the light engineering industry products. And this is not engineering alone. It includes the electronics which is associated with it, it includes the plastics which is associated, it includes the tires, everything. The other area, of course, the very big area is the pharmaceutical area. In fact, the whole world is now this, 2013, by next year, nearly over 250 drugs will be off patent. Their WHO drugs will be get off patent. And India is obviously the source of manufacturing of a lot of drugs here. The third is a very peculiar area, and India is going to, I really don't know where the strategy came from, but the fact is that by the end of the next couple of years, we're going to have 300 million tons of petroleum refining capacity in the country. Not just Reliance alone, but a lot of people together. 300 million tons is huge. The total consumption in India of petroleum product is only about 160, 170 million tons. So to be able to bring in the crude, to convert it into products, and perhaps to convert it into petrochemicals, and to be able to sell it in the rest of the world, I mean, people have taken a huge entrepreneurial call on this, and I think this is going to work out into, because the refining, if you look at the refining margins in India are among the best in the world. They're not the old refineries of the public sector, but if you leave that out, they are among the best in the world, which means they are making money, bringing crude from Venezuela and sending it back to America. That leads to working out, and also petrochemicals. So petrochemicals, that's another area which is coming up as a very big area. Finally, of course, housing. Housing, which means that there's a big housing boom, because every Indian wants to own a house. So when you talk about housing, people are upgrading in anything to do with houses. You talk of furniture, you talk of doors, you talk of windows, you talk of lighting, you talk of wash basins and faucets, etc. The entire hardware industry. You talk of designing, you talk of landscaping. All this industry is absolutely booming. These are kind of huge opportunities which are happening. And if you look at this particular list, and this list is fairly free of government intervention and government politics and government policy. So, and that is why we say, I keep saying, and Mr. Pillai doesn't believe me, that in spite of all this, India will continue to grow at 6 to 7%. Thank you.